Dear students, we start now with the second part of the introduction into the peripheral nerves. As we have seen in the first part, which could be called the general neuroanatomy, showing the introduction into the structures, into the components of the neural system, and explaining how the neurons form the chains, or how they form the specialized structures called receptors in the different parts of the body. The following part comprises the short review of the spinal nerves. There's no way to go to the details of all the structures, all the branches, no discussion, absolutely no way to explain all the nerves, all the branches. But as the short review will be sent to you by handouts. So back to our first diagram. We are discussing uh, about the spinal nerve. We know the spinal nerve consists of different fibers. The blue ones, as we remember from the previous explanation, which are the ascending neurons, the red ones, which are descending neurons, then in green, the autonomic neurons. All of them run in the fasciculi, and all of them are also covered by the connective tissue. So we have to pay full attention to the connective tissue, which is like the block of the green color on the right side of our right upper corner of our diagram. So now look please at the left side to the axon. Axon in light yellow color is surrounded by thin layer of the connective tissue called endoneurium below the axon, endoneurium. And then the fasciculi are covered by the perineurium. And finally, the whole nerve is covered by the epineurium on the right side of the diagram. So the connective tissue covers all the surfaces of the neuron, of the axons or the fasciculi of the neurons, and also the whole nerve. Don't forget that the neuron is or must be supplied by the blood. So that's why we see also artery and vein passing into the neuron. Concerning the terminology, one nerve, as you see the following part, underlined by yellow line, one nerve supplies part of the skin, we call it dermatome, so the area is called dermatome. One nerve also supplies the muscle or muscles, we call it myotome, and finally also the bones, ligaments, joints, etc., and we call this area sclerotome. So repeating again, one nerve supplies dermatome, myotome, and sclerotome. The spinal nerve consists of the following components. According to the types of different neurons or fibers. A are the motor, which innervate the skeletal muscles, as we said, describing the skeletal reflex arch. Then the second one is the sensory system, receiving the information impulses from the subcutis, from the skin, etc., from the mucosa, from the free surfaces. And C are autonomic, innervating smooth muscle, as we said, in the organs, then fibers of smooth muscles in the glands, and finally wall of the arteries. So these are components, but we also define the branches. We use the abbreviation BRR in paresthesis. The branches are the ventral branches from plexuses. They are formed in the cervical, lumbar, and sacral area, not in the thoracic nerves. Then the dorsal branches are segmental, always segmental, and then the following, next one, on the next page, yes, we say that the segments are usually interconnected on the ventral side, forming, as is written on the right side of this page, plexuses. So we see the segments and plexuses. We try to pay our attention to the left part of the diagram. We see the segments labeled in the yellow point and labeled by C 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7, T8 and also T1 or TH1, which means thoracic. As you look at the first four segments from C1 to C4, they form the cervical plexus. Then we see the segments of C5, C6 with some interconnection from C4 forming the trunk, the upper trunk. Then C7 forms without any interconnection the middle trunk, and finally C8 and T1 form the lower trunk. So there are three trunks forming the brachial plexus. We see the segment C5, T1, and together we call it cervical brachial plexus, consisting of the segment C1 to T1. Starting now with the first part, which is the cervical plexus. We said that cervical plexus is found on the neck region. We can look at the full page, and we see the cervical plexus, which consists of the sensory branches A, motor branches B, and communicating branches. The first diagram shows the lateral view. We are looking at the area around the sternocleidomastoid. On the bottom of this page, the sternocleidomastoid is in this diagram a little bit reddish violet color, which is crossed by the blue line. You see the external jugular vein, and we see also the auricle with the parotid gland is written on the right upper corner of this small diagram. Concerning the black lines, they show the peripheral nerves belonging to the cervical plexus, and they are all of them are sensory. So starting with the sensory branches, when we look at the first left side, we see the lesser occipital nerve, segment C2, C3, then the greater auricular, the next one below. Then you see in yellowish and black dotted line indicated the nervous or neural point. This is the point from which arise all these branches. And below this point, we see the supraclavicular nerves from segment C3, C4, which are three, lateral, intermediate, and medial. You see all of these three. Then the last one is on the right side. The name is transverse cervical nerve, segments C2, C3. And this has two parts, one lower and upper. And note please that the upper is connected with the red line. The red line has the name R, that means ramus colli, belonging to the facial nerve CN7 in red line. And I used the red color for the motor branches, because this nerve number 7 here is motor, and forms the interconnection with that transverse cervical nerve, which is called ansa cervicalis superficialis, superficial ansa. Ansa means the loop. So ansa is encircled by red. So we can say the first communicating branch is ansa cervicalis. On the surface, the superficialis, it innervates, as you see, a red and black arrow platysma, muscle platysma is the same innervation as the muscles of the facial expression on the face. We are looking now at the next page. Next page, very good. So, and now this diagram shows full view, and the branches, not only the blue one, the sensory, as in the previous case, but we used that one, that for black. Then the red, the motor, and also the interconnecting, the ansa. So starting with the blue ones, first of all, we see the segment C1, C2, C3, 4, 5, and 6. In blue, I'm just repeating lesser occipital, greater auricular, transverse cervical, supraclavicular, as we said in the previous explanation, and also the free neck. But then we pay attention to the red lines or arrows. In the upper right corner is written motor branch or motor branches. Yes, motor branches go to the different muscles in the neck area, like the levator scapulae, trapezius, is written trapezius, mistake, trapezius, or the other muscles, because some of them have more than one type of the innervation. This is the dorsal part or posterior or right part of the diagram. We can look now at the specialized interconnections between C1 and then C2 and C3 together, forming superior radix. You are looking into the loop, and also inferior radix. Superior radix is connected with the inferior radix, forming finally ansa cervicalis profunda, deep ansa. Yes, this is that ansa that innervates, as we see the four lines, two infrahyoid muscles. Here we remember that infrahyoid muscles are innervated by ansa cervicalis profunda, while the suprahyoid muscles are innervated by different nerves according to the different development of the nerves, which develop together with their nerves. And then we see also in the thick, solid or board letters phrenic nerve. So phrenic nerve with segments C3, C4, C5, as you see below the name, innervating the diaphragm, by motor branches. We see the red line. That diaphragm is also innervated by the sensory blue one. This is logical because diaphragm is covered by the pleura superiorly, by the peritoneum inferiorly. The phrenic nerve also innervates the pericardium, and also on the right side we see the superior surface of liver, spleen, and stomach. Yes, because the only small areas of these organs are covered by the peritoneum. That means also this peritoneum is innervated by the phrenic nerve. Very important nerve innervating the diaphragm. We can go to the segmental innervation. We see that the nerves innervate when we go from left to right. They innervate different segments. In example is a T12, L1, L2. Doesn't matter which sample or which type of segments we will see. And these are dermatomes of the skin, and we see also the overlapping areas of the dermatomes. Yes, they are not strictly defined areas on the skin, but very important information for the neurologist, for the neurology, is to know the position and size of the dermatomes, because they know exactly where is projected the pain from the organs. So then below that you see the skin and viscera have the same segmental innervation, and we use a special name as zones. Zones which represent projection of the internal segmental innervation from the organs to the skin. So you see below the grayish line that the dermatomes have the same segmental innervation as the organs. And that means arrow which goes down, pain from an organ is produced to the skin area, to the dermatome of the same segment. And the horizontal arrow shows that is important for neurology or neurosurgery. How to summarize these facts? Again, head zone is the part of the body which has the same segmental innervation projected from the viscera to the surface of the body, to the skin. That means that the pain from one internal organ is also registered as the pain found in the skin area, in the dermatome. That's why these zones of head are important for neurology, because neurologists can simply identify the pain coming from the typical organ. A good example is the pain from the gallbladder, or from the kidney, or from the other parts of the body. Next, we are looking now on the next page. Next one, yes, and then we approaching now to the brachial plexus a bit more. Yes, yes, yes. We are now in the segments C5T1. It's written that is formed in the lateral triangle of the neck and descends in the interscalenic fissure together with the subclavian artery. Yes, if you are a bit I'm sure that you remember that we defined the interscalenic fissure as the fissure between the anterior scalenus and middle scalenus, and that the brachial plexus passes together with the caudally oriented subclavian artery, while the subclavian vein lies in front of the scalenic fissure. This brachial plexus segment C5 to T1 has two principal parts. A is called supraclavicular. The second one, B, is infraclavicular. The difference between them lies not only in the position but also in the contents of the fibers, because the supraclavicular has, as you see, vertical red line, consists of only motor fibers. That means these are only motor neurons, and B has both sensory and motor. Of course, they are also the autonomic, but they are not now at the moment principal for the explanation, because the autonomic must be found in all of them. So just short review without any details. So we see the nerves. Number one is dorsal scapular, innervating rhomboids, and also levator scapulae. The second one is long thoracic. We remember that it innervates serratus anterior muscle. Serratus anterior was described together with the special symptoms, scapula alata. You probably remember when we explained that this long thoracic nerve is very superficial and is very sensitive for any violence, and any damage to this long thoracic nerves leads to the scapula alata, which is paresis of the nerve, which leads to the weak muscle, weak serratus, usually attaching scapula firmly to the wall of the thorax. So that means that any damage to the nerve leads to the elevation of scapula, and we use that a special saying that a good general practitioner looking at the dorsal side or the back of the patient, looking at the scapula alata, that means that looking at the elevation like the wing of the angel on the back, sees immediately and knows immediately that there is a paresis of the long thoracic nerve. Then number three, subclavian nerves innervating small muscle, subclavian muscle. The number four is suprascapular, innervating supra-infraspinatus, above and below the spine of scapula. Number five, there are pectoral nerves innervating pectoral muscles. And then the next, the full page, are the thoracodorsal, a strong nerve, big one, innervating the biggest muscle, latissimus dorsi. We remember subscapular, innervating subscapular muscle, the same name, and teres muscle. No? And then we go to the eighth, which are the muscular branches. Next one, muscular branches to the scaleni muscles. We remember that scaleni muscles receive also innervation from this part of the brachial plexus. No, and then again, full page, good. And then we are in the category B, the infraclavicular part. There is a diagram which you can see also in the atlases, in the books, and it seems to be very complicated, but I'm offering you the construction, the way of the construction in the progressogram, which consists of 3 steps. And the formation of plexus will be much easier and well understandable for you, and you can even draw it by your hand and not to look at the relatively complicated diagram in the book. So starting with the step 1, we see on the right side the segments, black dots or black yellow, C5, C6 forming one trunk, C7 the middle trunk, and C8 to T1 the last one, the inferior trunks. Next page shows, yes, shows the second step. And this step is also very clear. Starting again from the right side, we see the segment C5, C6, C7, C8 to T1. The three horizontal lines are those three trunks. And then we see this oblique lines 2 and 2, the first types of interconnections. And they find that these interconnections result in formation of three chords. You see on the left side of the diagram. A is the lateral, B is the posterior, consisting of two components, and C is the medial. So now we are approaching to step 3. Step 3 originates or is based on the same procedure. We see on the right side again the segments, then 3 trunks, as we said, then 3 chords, and as you see, another interconnection forms finally 5 nerves. On the left side, you see red and blue, that means mixed nerves, with the names musculocutaneous. The name says that it innervates the muscles and also the skin. C5 to C7 from the lateral cord, lateral fasciculus, then axillary nerve C5 to C6. Then we approaching to the posterior, which consists of the radial nerve, and then we see the in the special position the median nerve, because median, as you see, has two portions, lateral and medial part. So the medial nerve has C5 to C7, and finally also from the medial fasciculus we see the ulnar nerve C8 to T1. So all these nerves are mixed. That means they are colored by, as you see, the vertical lines, red and blue. Then finally, we have also two medial cutaneous and only medial, which are situated or running from the medial cord, and we call them medial cutaneous of brachium and antebrachium, so innervating the arm and forearm. So, and then we can go to the next page. Very important are the nerve injuries. We can simply imagine some lesion. So lesion or paresis is the damage to the nerve, which results in very typical symptoms. If we can imagine, then we have the forearm and hand in the extension, and we remember that muscles on the dorsolateral side of the forearm antebrachium are innervated by the radial nerve. Mainly radial nerve. So then injury to the radial nerve leads to the wrist drop. That means that the extensors are weak, are not able to extend the hand. Medial nerve lesion results in the ape hand. We can imagine that ape hand is the narrow hand with without tenar portion, although it has the tenar portion. So in the case of the lesion of the medial nerve, the majority of the muscles innervated by the are innervated by the medial nerve. So that means that the ape hand reflects the weak muscles of the thenar, so they are like the thumb is firmly attached to the other, to the index, to the other fingers. That means that it is like the hand of the ape. The third one is ulnar nerve lesion. It's called claw hand. This is like the claw of the finger number 5, little finger number 4, also the ring finger, and also the median one, the central, because they are innervated. You remember the hypothenar is fully innervated by the ulnar nerve, and also the interosseous muscles are innervated by the ulnar nerve, and also two medial lumbricals. So the paresis of the ulnar nerve leads to the claw hand. Then very quickly, some words to the thoracic nerves. They consist of the segments T1 to T12. They have typical segmental pattern, and they have dorsal branch and ventral branches. So the dorsal branch has, as you see below it, innervating the skin on the back and also muscles on the back. And the ventral branches are called intercostal. We remember they run in the intercostal spaces in the typical order craniocaudal, which is vein, artery, and nerve. And they form the muscular branches for the intercostal muscles, innermost, internal, external, and cutaneous branches, anterior, lateral. So these are the intercostal, but they don't innervate just the wall of the thorax, because the segments T7 to T11 also innervate the abdominal wall, while the T12 is the subcostal, is the last one. So abdominal wall is innervated by the lower pairs of the thoracic nerves from segments T7 to T11. No? And then the next one is the lumbar plexus, a bit complicated, again full page. We are looking at the lumbar plexus formed by the segments T12, L4, and as we said at the beginning for our explanation, the lecture cannot give you full text and explanation of all the branches of all the nerves. This would take much more time, and this is the reason why we studied also from the books. But this diagram, simplified diagrams, are the constructions of the segments and the nerves. So using different colors, so starting from the left side, from the left column of different segments from T12 to L4, and then we go through the colored lines to the nerves. And simply, if you remember the segmental innervation of the nerves, like the subcostal has T12, which is logical, it must be red, but also iliohypogastric, innervating the inferior portion of the abdominal cavity, has the segment T12, and also the black one, L1. L1 has also the following ilioinguinal nerve, segment L1. You remember that this ilioinguinal nerve passes through the inguinal canal together with the small portion of the genitofemoral. And then follows the green one, which for the segment green, which is found in the lateral cutaneous, the only one, lateral cutaneous femoral nerve, segments L2, L3, as you see, and on the right side is the vertical blue line, indicating that this is the only one pure sensory. Then the largest nerve of this lumbar plexus, the femoral, with segments L2, L3, L4, and you simply can follow the lines. Blue must be, green, it's from segment L2, blue from L3, and yellowish from L4. Genitofemoral is from segments L1, L2. Genitofemoral has femoral portion, genital portion, the small genital portion passes also through the inguinal canal. And finally, through the obturator foramen pass the fibers or neurons forming the obturator nerve, segments L2, L3, and 4. So you will look into the book, and then you will study the main branches. Please, the only main branches, because we don't have that much time, and we have to know the orientation of the main structures, because we have to be sure about the peripheral nerves. Next one, and the last one, is the sacral plexus. As you see, the sacral plexus consists of the segments L4 to C01, the first coccygeal, the only one. They are again the mixed nerves, and we start traditionally the traditional way from the segments on the left side. We see the segments L4, L5, S1, S2, S3, S4, S5, and coccygeal. I used different colors. There are more nerves, so then a little bit more complicated view, but the same way. But we start with the nerves. Superior gluteal, yes, nerve, the big one, even bigger is the inferior gluteal, the superior gluteal from segments L2, L4, S1. You can follow that L4, S1, inferior gluteal, L5, S 2. Then the largest nerve in this category is the sciatic. We remember there is the thickest nerve, longest nerve in the body. The thickness of is as the flat little finger, consisting of segments L4, S3. And then the following is posterior femoral cutaneous. Again, the only one is the sensory. And then follows important pudendal nerve. Pudendal nerve innervates the floor of the pelvis. Important nerve passing through the pudendal canal, Alcock's canal, as you probably remember in the anal or ischioanal or ischiorectal fossa. The last one is coccygeus. Also, coccygeus important innervating the posterior part of the floor around the coccyx. And concerning the sciatic nerve, as we said, the biggest part of the sacral plexus. Important is the position of sciatic nerve because it lies at the center of the gluteal region and descending also in the center of the posterior femoral region. The important position of the nerve is related to the, we call it, safe area. So you see, if we can divide the gluteal region in 4 quadrants, the upper lateral, the most upper lateral area is called safe area, important for the intramuscular injections, because as you could imagine, this safe area lies outside the position of the sciatic nerve, and then this will never be damaged in the intramuscular injections. So this is all to the review of the plexuses. Thank you for your attention, and then again expecting new presentations.